All right, hello, people. You're here with Sean Brooks, the realtor, and I want to go over something. I want to go over this topic. So, the seller house is under contract. The process is almost finished where the person's going to get their mortgage, and now they're asking the question, I don't want to sell. What are the implications? All right, so let me go over this with you guys right now so you can understand. On the screen here, I have the standard contract for Delaware. All right, so I'm gonna go through this screen. Um, Up top, it'll have the person's name buying and the person's name selling. It'll have the tax ID number, the address. It'll have the purchase price that you guys agreed upon, and this is an earnest money deposit. If you notice here, it says deposit will be due in 1 day. So that right there is a contingency from the seller. The seller has met that. These are the things that's going to be included with the house. These are the financial terms. Okay, so the person is, financing the deal. Okay, the seller has already did this. Buyer will make written application in manner consistent with the provided above within 7 days. The buyer did that. All right. This is the settlement date. All this contract has been turned into the mortgage company. The mortgage company is doing their work. Okay. So behind the scenes, I don't know, and most realtors don't know if the person that put the offer in is selling another house. If that's the case, their house is under contract. They're now buying a new house. So it's not just the seller and the buyer, it's the seller, the buyer, and another buyer. That could be possibly in play here. All right. So all this is, how the house is conveyed, buyer's notice and disbursement process. This is regarding the money that they put down. If the deal falls apart, because of a contingency like a home inspection and both parties can't agree, then the money is returned and the deal is off. All right. So, in the situation where the buyer waived all home inspections, waived the appraisal, waived everything, that deal is going to be headed towards um, bank approval. Nowhere in this contract does it say uh, if the seller changes their mind, what happens. So, this contract is based on real estate law in the state of Delaware. So it talks about condition of property inspection. And this, if this is clicked no, then they're not getting a wood destroying. So we skip that part. If they click no here, then we skip that part, right? And they talk about other inspections. If they skip this inspection part, is nowhere in the contract, right? So this is where it talks about the seller. In the event seller provides buyer or buyers provide seller timely written notice of major defects, right? It's talking about the defects, right? So if they waive the inspection, that section is null and void. Now it talks about buyer's duty. If the seller refuses to correct a major defect, it then specifies what happens there, right? But it oh, doesn't specify in that section what happens. Okay. In section 25, seller default. If the seller shall, for some reason, not execute herein, fail or refuse to perform seller's obligation to the buyer, and the buyer shall not also be in default, buyer shall either have all monies paid herein on the account of the purchase price together with such reasonable costs incurred in preparation for settlement, refund forthwith, whereupon all rights and obligations herein shall cease and terminate, or buyer shall have the right to seek remedy and maintain action against the seller, and to which buyer may be entitled whether at law or in equity. This section is very, very important. This section talks about what happens if the seller does not want to convey the property, number one, or do a specific thing. All right. It then talks about no representation. Buyer and seller understands and acknowledge that brokers is not at any time authorized to make any representation about this agreement or the property other than those written in this agreement. Okay. Indemnification and attorney fees. In the event, this section 27. In the event any dispute arises under this agreement between seller and buyer, resulting in broker or any agent or any sub agent or any employee of the broker being a party to any litigation, seller or buyer, whichever is unsuccessful, shall indemnify and hold broker, agent, sub agent, you know, um, too. So in this particular case, should seller waive any inspections or provisions in this agreement of sale, either as the results of making the item no, failing to mark the item yes, it covers that, right? But mainly, it doesn't give the seller a way out. In section 33, miscellaneous, Delaware law governs this agreement. The section captions are for convenient reference only and are not intended to limit or enlarge the substance of this agreement. So it's no back out clause. It's none whatsoever. What section 25 specifies is what the buyer can actually do. And that can be, if you look at that last section, buyer shall have the right to seek any remedy. Pay attention to that line. Any remedy and maintain any action against seller to which buyer may be entitled, whether at law or in equity. All right. Now I want to mention a lot of people don't know what we do as a realtor. We also file case studies in the state, and it has to do with lawsuits and problems where a seller doesn't want to sell after they sign the agreement initially. What type of things have we seen out of these lawsuits? We've seen where a seller is forced to sell. We've seen um, damages issued from the buyer to the seller. So I always ask my sellers, are you positively sure that you want to sell? If they say they want to sell, then I'm listing it. If they say they're not sure, I'm not listing the property because I don't want to put them in this position. The reason why I'm talking about this is I've had, quite a few sellers that have popped up at the last minute when we're getting closer to settlement. What if I don't want to sell? All right. So um, just want you guys to understand this is already written into the contract. All right. So be very sure if you want to sell. Um, it's kind of weird because sometimes I understand if you don't want to sell if the house didn't appraise, but if the house appraises, then you're getting the money that we discussed. So you have to be positively sure this is what you really want to do. All right. So I want